The following program contains the opinions of the host, guests, and call-in participants. These do not necessarily represent the views of this show's distributors or sponsors. This program may contain obscene, profane, or otherwise objectionable language. Viewer discretion is advised. Hey, greetings from Minneapolis, coming to you cordless, everybody. It's Tuesday night, September 23rd, 2025. I am Jim Peters, and you are watching Jim Peters at Night on all sorts of networks because the intertube works, and we have to thank Al Gore for starting that. It's episode number 278, if you're keeping score at home, and you should, because someday there'll be a test. And I was just trying to think, I think that means our 300th episode is going to be just before Thanksgiving. I haven't bothered to sit down and figure it out, but I think so. I think that's the thing. How are you? I am good. Here in Minneapolis, the weather's been lovely. We've been in the upper 70s, now. The first of the month is next Thursday, and we're taking next week off. Sorry to say, but we are. A long time planned. And I think the average temperature for October 1st in Minneapolis is 61, and they're thinking it's going to be close to 80, and that's not a bad thing. I don't know. When you live in the icebox of the world. I've explained this before. We have a really interesting thing. What you don't know about the weather in Minnesota, it's cold, right? 4 months of the year, it's awful. It sucks. The other 8's pretty nice. We get about a dozen days a year over 90 here, which is pretty good because you go up to Canada, straight up from here, even on the North Shore of Lake Superior at Thunder Bay, I think they have 3 days over 70, believe it or not. No, you don't want to live up there. Probably don't want to live here either. But here's the interesting thing that we got going on here. So this is what's called continental climate. Now, Minnesota and Minneapolis are smack dab in the middle of the North American continent. That's not just the United States. I'm talking about, we're in this upper middle of the United States. One of the reasons is actually pretty cool. The city finally got its shit together about 20, 30 years ago. We have fairly good convention facilities here, and people like to come here, especially during the summer, because we're roughly the equal distance flying from any other place in the U.S. So everybody travels about the same amount. That's kind of the theory, and apparently it works. We have a robust convention business here. It's also, we're the 15th largest city in America, so that helps. But the thing about being in the middle of the continent, that is including Canada, is we have a true continental climate, and that is there's no large oceanic bodies of water close to us. And because of that, during the summer, it can be 88, 89 degrees during the day, and at 3 o'clock in the morning, it's still 85 degrees, which is it's the weirdest damn thing. I mean, I used to drive around 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, go on the freeways and drive around with the windows open. I've never owned a convertible. That's kind of one of my things, bucket list of things to buy. Because it's so warm out, it's just really odd. It's like it's day, except the sun isn't shining. And this is apparently the only real place of any population in the United States where that happens. Because you go even, to Phoenix or Southern California or the desert there, it's ridiculously hot during the day, but it gets quite cold at night. It'll get down to 50 degrees. Here, no, it's the opposite. It does not get cold. So, and I'm sure you wanted to hear that, didn't you? All right, what do we got going on tonight? ERIC WEIR is joining us. He's an entrepreneur. He's written a book called Who's Eating Your Pie? And apparently pie and cheese are the big analogies. Now, we talked to him this afternoon. He's a great guy. You'll enjoy this immensely. So, and the thing about eating your pie, and it's a common financial analogy, but it bears repeating. And this is the thing where liberal fiscal policy simply doesn't work. It's one of the reasons I became a conservative. I study macroeconomics, and I've come to the conclusion it's impossible to study. I'm not the only one who's come to this conclusion. It's impossible to study macroeconomics without realizing at some point that liberal fiscal policy simply does not work. It gets down to the thing that Margaret Thatcher said 40 years ago about the fact that sooner or later you run out of other people's money. And that's really true. It's literally true. But, people use the pie analogy when it comes to money. But the problem with that is in a capitalist society, the pie is constantly expanding. Well, most of the time anyway, unless you run into a recession, really bad recession or depression. It's not that it doesn't work this way about the fact that Elon Musk gets a bigger slice of the pie because he has a bigger piece, you get a smaller piece. It does not work that way at all. Your piece is dependent entirely on what you do. And so anyway, we had a wonderful time talking to Eric. You'll enjoy talking to him. He actually he called in from via webcam from the green oh Jesus Christ, is it Greensboro, South Carolina? Yeah, I think so. I can't remember. Anyway, we're talking to him today. Tomorrow we're talking to Manny Gunasekera, and she's the former chief of staff of the U.S. EPA during the Trump first term. Excuse me. I burp a lot, don't I? I don't. Do you watch this? I'm burping all the time. It's terrible. I mute myself. I don't want you to hear it. You don't need to hear that crap. Anyway, her book is called "Y'all Fired: A Southern Belle's Guide to Restoring Federalism and Draining the Swamp." And she is a woman of high interest. Like I said last night, I said my generation would refer to her as a pistol. And so I'm going to run that by her tomorrow, see what she thinks about that. But she's joining us tomorrow. I'll talk about her book. And Thursday, I finally figured this out. We're taking Thursday off. We had that up in the air for about a week. But no, we determined today we're not doing a show on Thursday. Can't come up with a guest. Don't want to do shows without guests anymore. I'm leaving on vacation Friday morning. So, no show on Thursday. We will, of course, run reruns. We will run reruns out every Friday night. Also, we've never done shows on Friday. We run a rerun, and we'll be back on Monday, October 6th. So we're taking Thursday off and all of next week. So that's what we got going on here. We, as the boomers would say, we got it going on. Yeah, right. Okay, so in 12 seconds, here's ERIC WEIR. Stay tuned, please. Joining us from the Greenville, South Carolina airport. He's ready to go somewhere. ERIC WEIR, author of Who's Eating My Pie? ERIC, hi. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me on, Jim. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So, okay, let's go through your life a little bit here. How'd you start out? Where are you from?
Yeah, started out in I guess I was born in California. I started out in Georgia for the most part, in a town called Morrow. And part of my story was I ended up having a traumatic brain injury in a car wreck when I was age 5. That was really framing for me, and then I lost the ability to.
Eric, do you remember it?
I do. I remember hitting the car, spinning around, and then I remember the police officers telling me not to get out of the car, and my mother telling me the same thing. And then I remember as a kid, and I had a brother who was like, "We're going to explode." He was like, "I'm 5, he's like 7, he's 12." And I remember seeing Bugs Bunny Road where all the cars exploded. So I had a choice of disobeying the police officer, my mother, or explosion. And I chose explosion. So that was.
Well, you obviously lived through it. So
I lived through it, yeah. But I stuttered like terribly, got picked on, and went to therapy. And I had like a non-PC therapist. I said, "Eric, life's going to be hard. Here's her opening act, and odds are you're going to be a failure." She said,
great. That's fantastic.
You'll be reclusive. You'll want to engage anything, but it was all a setup, right? And she goes, "But if you've used setbacks as stepping stones and uncomfortable situations to make you stronger, you can be unstoppable and very successful, but the choice is up to you. Failure or success. It's really that simple."
So Eric, do you think we don't have enough of that now?
Yeah, oh yeah, everyone's soft right now. Yeah, I don't know that everyone would survive that counselor. But my father, I looked at him and I'm like, is this person a quack? I mean, what's going on? And he's like, Eric, life's going to be hard. And I'm like, not the answer I was looking for. so, so there we go. So there we are. And ended up a lemonade stand, you know, and it was funny when you're a little blonde kid, 5, and location, I'm in real estate, it's everything. So I'm right in front of a school and the cars line up, and my mom said, you should sell lemonade. And I'm like, that's a good idea. So I sell lemonade, right? And I'm asking 50 cents and I stutter. So your name's E's are hard to say, W's and F's.
What is it, like the 1970s? When is it?
74, 1970.
Yeah.
No, 1972, sorry.
Uh-huh.
So I'm Eric Weir with 50-cent lemonade, and I can't say it. So I make a sign, and they're like, and they always come back, how much is lemonade? And I'm like, it's point to the sign. How much is it? Because it's 50 cents. And that must be code word for give me $1 or $5 because I made $86 as a 5-year-old in 1972. So my dad comes back from work and he'd been laid off. He's a foreman at a night shift. And he goes, how'd you do today? I said, yeah, I made $86. He goes, I don't think I made $86.
Yeah, that's about $400 now.
Yeah, it was a big hit. It was a big hit. Yeah.
Was your stutter associated or part of the problem of your accident?
That's what they said. Yeah, and I ended up thinking I just got scared at the accident, and I thought that for years. And then I met a person. No, it's not scared or fear. That's a full on. That's a traumatic injury. And it hit your speech area. And I carried it with me till I was 40. And I'd volunteered to like be greeter at church. And you haven't lived till you're a stuttering greeter at a church.
I believe it.
You're like, how did you do it here?
Yeah, praise the Lord.
Welcome.
Really funny.
It was a nightmare. So at age 40, the pastor's like, thank God for that, what set you back. And I'm like, I don't know about that. I mean, Paul tried that twice and it didn't work out for him. I said, all right, I'll go ahead and try it. And it went away over like 3 years after that. You know?
Oh, so you didn't really do anything particular?
No, I just tried forever and never got anything. And then
interesting.
When I had gratitude, it went away. Because what happened is I had anxiety around every conversation. You know, everyone I met, at
this point, you're probably making pretty good money, huh?
You know, I was doing great because apparently, stuttering, people have to listen to you. Either you don't get off the ground, or people are like, they realize you're pretty authentic because you're out there in a very difficult environment trying to represent, products and services. So it was a blessing in disguise. And that's when I started thanking God for making me who I was and giving me the resolve that I have that I probably wouldn't otherwise have.
Isn't it funny how things like that work? You know, like the Norwegians started the traffic circle thing, and they came to the conclusion that the reason traffic circles work rather than stoplights is it actually makes people think more about what they're doing. So there's
Yeah.
I
ride a motorcycle sometimes, and I never go through a traffic circle not really thinking, I'm like, who's going to hit me?
No.
Yeah, but you do think, even with a car, I think, but it's I think it's also, it keeps you engaged, and you don't feel like you're losing time the same way as when you're in a stoplight.
Yeah, that's true. So, okay, so you, where'd you go to college, or did you?
I went to Georgia State undergraduate, then Harvard for graduate school.
And what did you study in Harvard? MBA?
Yeah, the MBA in finance, and then I did additional studies in real estate and strategic. They have a group of courses called strategy. So business strategy and real estate were core focuses in addition to the masters. Was
it worth it? Did you learn something?
I did. What I really learned was how to explain things a lot more detailed. The professors that I had at Harvard were with a couple of exceptions, just wonderful teachers, would break things down. And even though there was a high bar for achievement, a high bar for work, there were really no bad questions, and you could ask questions about it. They didn't make you feel bad for asking a question, it was very demanding. But it's interesting when you have a high quality invested teacher, you end up having you can learn stuff at a faster pace, and the camaraderie and the work around there was good, was very helpful. I went to another school which I liked, had some great professors as well, but I had when you're teaching at Harvard, you're kind of like, that's the epitome for being a professor, and you're pretty much on your game. Not every time, but most of the time.
Yeah. Well, you had a good side career running around giving speeches to like corporations and stuff like that. Have you done any actual teaching in the classroom? Or?
I have. I teach, and I got my master's primarily so I could do that. But I teach at the Goizetta Business School occasionally as a guest professor at Furman University. I think I've been at Clemson and a few others. But it's something I enjoy doing and want to do more of. And at times you would talk, where I went to school, but it really, it's been good. It's something I really enjoy.
So you made at least your early money in real estate? Is that what happened?
I made my first money. My first deal was kind of funny. I did I was 18 and it was a real estate commission, and I was going to sell houses. My parents had a real estate company.
Mm-hmm.
Mom did, and it was small, and they had a model house, and I had a Smoking the Bandit sort of Trans Am because I made a little money, so I had that, and I ended up showing a mom and like a kid around, and I hated it because I didn't find the sucker for like 3 days, and this kid was just chomping on the sucker the whole time, and I noticed he didn't have it, and he was crying, and I'm like, a very sensitive, 17, I was an 18-year-old, and I finally found that I pulled like a big chunk of the carpet up, and I'm like, I'm never doing this again. So I went to some course on how to syndicate property taught by these husband and wife Mormon group out of Utah. And they were saying about how to get people to work together. For example, go 2 hard corners and work in the middle. So I got them on a list with me, and basically the houses were, say 50,000. I said, if I could get you 75, would you sell? And they're like, you can have the furniture for 75,000. This is a long time ago. It's like 1985. So I got them all the full price, and I did that contingent upon rezoning the property for commercial. And then in the meantime, I found a shopping center that would buy it, that would go into it, and that ended up, working it. And I made like a 10% commission on it. So that for me was my first hit in real estate. And then it was stocks. I took the money and I bought.
Yeah, but hold on a second. Hold on. Don't you have to then turn around and convince the city council to change the zoning law?
Oh, it was a nightmare. So I ended up going in Atlanta, and this guy named Marvin Eisenberg, who was a great guy, decided to help teach me. And I was at the same meeting of a guy named Truett Cathy, who founded Chick-fil-A. So I'm at the meeting in 1985 in Fulton County, and I'm way over my head, right? And Mr. Cathy, he went right before me. He goes, my name is Truett Cathy, and we sell chicken to save souls. And that's what I do. We know who you are, Mr. Cathy. Well, I want another permit to open here. You can have it, Mr. Cathy. That's fine. I'm like, I'm not going to top that act. I'm like, I'm 18 and I'm thirsty and hungry for cash.
What did you do?
So Marvin Eisenberg's like, in a transitional area, we're trying to bring shopping centers to the lower Fulton County near Mr. Cathy's, Chick-fil-A headquarters. And, we ended up, we had traffic studies, impacts and stuff like that. And it passed. And, but it was a wonderful learning experience, but it was but you never do anything alone. You always have somebody along the way that helps you. And that was Marvin Eisenberg helped me a lot. And then he was great. He was a very funny man.
Did you find that, your parents were in real estate? Did you find that you had a natural talent for it, or just because they went into it, or both? Or my father had a natural talent for real estate. I don't.
Yeah, I think I had. I mean, I liked it because I could understand it. When I was a kid, I mean, my parents went bankrupt twice, right? So then one funny year, they give us great Christmas gifts. My brother would tell the story, and somebody died laughing. We didn't even think it was funny because that's all we knew. And they gave us these gifts, and we had a great time. It goes, it's that time of night. We're like, what do you mean? We got to take them back. He said, we can't afford the bill. So they took back our Christmas presents. He said, we thought we could pay them for a day anyway. So they took them back. And then, so I was like, geez. And then I would get gifts, like candy or anything anybody give me, I just take it to school and sell it. So it was like a little trader as a young age, and making leather bracelets. But real estate, that made sense to me, because if I can see something somebody else can't see, or I can change the utilization or purpose of it, then I can change the value. And I give an example. If you had a 10-acre farmland and you put a Starbucks on the corner, the other 9 acres now have greater value because a Starbucks is there.
Right.
And that's what I figured with real estate, is it doesn't move as fast as cryptocurrency or stocks, but if you can have a plan and a strategy, you can oftentimes have performance that exceeds other asset classes.
Well, as a generalization, or what is the most common thing that people don't see when they're selling real estate?
I think people are blinded by familiarity. I think that with most people that they think that I'm in a job, I'm making $17 an hour, I need to make another $300 a month. How do I do that? I do overtime. So they just think in a lane that's very logical. It's just next step. It's progressive. And for me, I like real estate because I can just reframe things entirely and just have a very different experience. So for me, that's what I really like.
Why did you write the book?
I wrote the book because I wanted to.
Let's put the book on the screen. Look how slick I am, Eric. Look
at
that. There's your book. I don't know if you can see it, but the viewers can see it. Who's eating your pie? Right, there you go.
Awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah. We'll put it back up again. So why'd you write the book?
I wrote the book. Well, people were they were down and out, and they were detached, and they were just in a bad way during COVID. And I thought I'd write this book as a way to encourage people and help them to see the world in a different light.
Why don't most people bother to take the risk to do something different? Is it there? I mean, fear is the not obvious answer, but why are they afraid?
I think they're I think people are afraid. I think people are blinded by familiarity. They have limiting thoughts, like who's eating your pie. The whole point of it is my whole thought of is telling people, I believe the lies as a kid, like you'll never amount to anything, or you can't do that, or you're just like your father, or you don't have the education or the money. And what I found is, if you can get to clarity, which is oftentimes very hard to attain, but if you can get to clarity, you can attract capital, resources, education, talent, everything. And the great example is Elon Musk. I'm gonna go to Mars. I mean, it sounds wild, but he attracts capital for that. Or I'm gonna create a satellite system, or electric car, or a driverless car. And he has absolute clarity of where he's going to get. So the difference, what separates people is clarity on the outcome and flexibility on the steps. The steps change. You may try one thing, it doesn't work, but you know where you're going. And like I climbed a mountain not too long ago. I was traveling, and I had an idea of a path I was going to take, and then I ended up going a different path because I got up there and I'm like, these rocks are a little bigger than I want to undertake today, so I'm going to go left and zig and zag, and that's kind of it. So, but I knew where my destination was. I just had a path it was a little different than I anticipated.
But you just explained something that I find kind of fascinating in business, and that is, it's amazing how inflexible people can be.
Yeah, it is, and I think that's for control, because you feel out of control so often in your life, and you feel by like clamping down and trying to own something that you can be in more control, which oftentimes that may not be the case.
Well, I was going to say, haven't you found that, and sometimes actually trying to control things, you end up controlling them even less?
Oh yeah, it backfires, or you try to squeeze control out of something, and then it just backfires on you for sure. So I mean, I've had I've made almost all the mistakes, and some of them twice. But when you're trying, micromanaging a company, like if you want to have a big company, you just can't micromanage it. And
right.
The people say, if I want it done right, I got to do it myself. Well, maybe you're just a poor trainer, or maybe you don't want to take the time to train. But it's the same thing. I'd have goals if I had time. If I had time, I'd set goals. Well, life's going by. Whether you set goals or not, we're getting older each day. And I'm still shocked when I see myself on the teleprompter with a gray hair and a beard, and I'm like, I feel like I'm 25,
Eric, I think you're a very attractive man.
What's a haircut that does it, I got a haircut in Vegas. Guy goes, "How do you want?" I said, "Surprise me." Want a wide part down the middle and short on the side.
You know, your
lightning bolts or something.
Your publicist sent out a bunch of questions, and here's the one that really fascinated me, and that is it moral to want to build wealth? And I don't understand why that's immoral. Could you explain how people think here?
It's so funny, and I only run into this in the Christian circles, is if you go on Instagram and people are trying to make millions and tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars, they always kind of celebrate each other, like, wow, I was so good for you to do that. And all you had to do was take your clothes off on camera and do stuff like that. And you made $100,000 a month or whatever. And they support each other, whether or not they agree with what they do. I've seen the side of church and things like that where people feel like, hey, you having money's evil or money's the root of evil, but it's not. It's the love of money's the root of evil, not money itself.
I'm sorry, what did you say? The what of money? I didn't catch that.
The love of money.
The love of money. Right.
God, and it's a terrible God. It's a wonderful tool. I mean, there is no ministry without money. There is no anything with it. It's very important, but it's a terrible God. And I think for people who learn generosity, like I will give and share, then you become a faucet. You're never the supply. I mean, God's a supply, and you go, if I go do a big real estate deal and I have something happen, I mean, I couldn't have never do anything alone. And I need to be a faucet where I can redirect some of the resources to, my family, to my future, but also to giving back to charity and other causes. So it's important to think about that. And when you do that, it reframes money for you. It no longer controls you because you go from the scarcity mentality of I'll never have enough. When I retire, I'll be broke or I'll eat cat food. And, but if you end up living generously, it's weird or something that just happens where you have more, you worry less, and you seem to attract additional resources as time goes on.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. The worst advice, my mother is 101. I just saw her a couple days ago. She's still walking around, still kicking ass and taking names.
Wow.
But the worst advice she ever gave me was that money isn't important. And I know what she meant. She meant about the fact that in the grand scheme of life, in your spirituality, money shouldn't be that important. And she's probably right about that. But, as a little kid, I took that literally. And the thing is, that's not good because it's not good not to have money.
No, it's true. So it's important, and she's right. Just how do you articulate that to a child's mind?
Yeah, right.
I think I heard somebody say the other day, if you have money problems, you have no problems at all. You say if you have health problems, now you got problems.
Yeah.
But I know that I talk about the 5 F's in my book: faith, family, fitness, finance, friends. And whether you're a person of faith or not, you are a person of faith. You believe something. And the lens that you see the world through, I call faith. And so that lens can be lack. The lens can be abundance. It could be I'm only valued if I make a lot of money, and I'm willing to say no to family, to health, to friends, to make a lot of money. And what you find when you do that is over time, not immediately, but over time, your other areas of your life hurt. And then those areas consume you in the end. Well, now you're trying to spend the wealth you created to get your health back. Or you're trying to spend the wealth you created to try to buy a relationship with family or friends. So it's and in my book, I kind of talk about I don't think there's anything as a balanced life to me. I think there can be a life that is thought out, and it's purposeful, but I don't know that balance is attainable. But you can be informed by saying, hey, I'm working more now, but I'm going to work less in the future, and here's why, or I'm going to exercise more in the future, or we have a new child, and now I'm in balance other areas. So there's always a balancing act, and just have a way of knowing where you are, so you're conscious that I'm doing less of this than I probably ought to, and I seek to get back on base. And I think that helps people from getting derailed so severely in the end.
Yeah. I don't know how old you are. You don't look a day over 40, so I'm not going to bother to speculate. But I have a lot of people. Most of the people come on the show are quite successful. And the thing is, the funny thing I found interesting, and I've talked to several people about this, is that people who can afford not to work hardly ever stop working. I know.
That's so true. Yeah.
That's right. You look at, extremely wealthy people, but even people who can afford to do it, that they don't want to stop working. And now I forgot what my question was.
Well, I think there's a real reason for that, because I think I've heard people say, follow your dreams. And it seems like amazing advice. And or follow your passions. Maybe that's a better word. And I say, well, I follow dreams and I like a passion, but at least for the people that I've met, if you do something well, like you don't want to work, it becomes a passion. It becomes rewarding and fulfilling. And I think that that's what people who don't need to work anymore are still doing, that because they have passion for that, and they feel reward and they feel validated in some way because they're able to still contribute to society, and maybe they give back. And some of the people that I know one person that gives away half of everything he makes, and he's driven to make more money and live a more simple life because his purpose for working is to give away more. And every 3 years, his income has doubled for the last 30 years. And now he's an extremely wealthy person, but he gives away just crazy amount of money every year.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and yeah, you can't give away money if you don't have any.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Another question your publicist sent over, which is really basic, which caught me because it's so basic. And the question is, what is the stock market and how does it work? Can you explain that?
Yeah. Well, a lot of people may not know that. So the stock market, let's just take the S&P 500, called the Standard & Poor's 500. It's among the largest 500 companies in the United States. And that would include Tesla, it would include Microsoft, Oracle, Chevron, things of that nature. And then the idea is that's when the companies are owned in the stock market, they're fractionalized basically, where anyone can own it, an undivided interest in it through what's called a share. So you own a share of a security and a Chevron. So if you own one share or you own 1,000 shares, each share has a right to vote. And that vote would be cast, if you choose to help direct the future of the company or pick a board of directors. But that's a way for people to participate in the growth of the U.S. economy. If you say I'm going to own the largest 500 companies, then that's a nice way to track pretty closely with the growth of the economy and the growth of companies' profits throughout the United States.
Now, I don't have to tell you this. An index fund is basically when you just buy the top the top companies in like the S&P or the Dow 30 or that sort of thing, and just basically let it ride. And the amazing thing about that is that if you do that, which is really simple, it's one of the simplest things to do, you will beat 80% of the mutual funds that are working. Which begs the question.
I think it's actually higher than 80. I think it's closer to 90.
Yeah.
So the and it's a lower fee, right? So you're paying like 15 basis points, or less than 0.5%, less than 0.25% actually. And you own the indices. And right now, your largest holdings are Apple, they're Nvidia, they're Oracle, Microsoft, Meta. And they're like, oh, that's like a fantastic portfolio. Well, that's a big part of the S&P 500. In fact, 40% of it's technology right now. So that's a great spot for people to be. And things go through years. In the 70s, 80s was mostly oil, and then was mostly pharmaceuticals. So it moves around a bit. But yeah, it's a great way to go. There are other ways. Warren Buffett recommends that for his family and people that don't have time to really study markets or understand companies. And if you really have, if you're really an expert at understanding AI or consumption of chips in the future, or power or energy, or how would that apply, you can certainly be more focused in either in another exchange traded fund, which focuses in that sector, or individual securities, which most people are poor investors because they get, when things go down, they're not excited to buy more. They sell and get out. And sometimes that's necessary, but it becomes more involved. So for most people, an S&P 500 is certainly a reasonable solution.
Eric, where are you on the whole AI thing? I talk to a lot of people, and I'm a computer programmer myself, so I have some opinions, but where are you?
I think it's the largest change agent we've seen in 1,000 years. I think that it's going to massively impact efficiency and cost for companies. And I think people who choose to ignore it will become increasingly less compensated than those who learn to use it. And the people who learn to use it will be able to accomplish oftentimes more than those who don't. Now, there are exceptions. Like, I'm not sure AI is going to make me a faster electrician or plumber or roofer. So there are certain exceptions. But if I'm an administrative, or I'm touching Excel sheets or PowerPoint, or emailing or calling, they're just areas that are really going to be, in my opinion, incredibly impacted, a lot more efficient. And we've seen this, over and over again. If you think back, there used to be elevator operators, there used to be fax machines, there used to be
Right.
all these things, and just technology changes. There used to be 500 people at a large agricultural thing. Now there's 2 tractors and 2 people that drive them, and sometimes no person. It's on GPS, and the tractor just goes 24 hours a day.
That's unbelievable.
That just changes things, right? And it's going to be the same thing is going to happen in this industry as well.
My wife has a cousin who farms in Iowa. He owns 400 acres. He runs the entire farm, him and one other guy. And yeah, just exactly like you said, he has a combine. It plants and harvests 24 rows at a time. It's $1 million. He rides it once through the field. The GPS memorizes it. From that point on, he says, I literally just sit in the cab and read a book. He said, I'm just there and something goes wrong. The whole thing is automated.
Yeah, and it's air conditioned, music, and it's just like, hey, it's just like cruising. Has a thermos of coffee and maybe even a hot panini. But it's a different world, and it's revolutionized farming, and accounting is going to be the same way. I mean, there's some programs you can dump a drawer of receipts into it, scans them, collates them. I mean, it's like, wow, that's somebody used to do that. And I mean, if you go to like Gamma, or you go to Canva, you go to Grok, ChatGPT, and hey, would you amortize a 30-year mortgage for me, a 7% interest, principal, and boom, it's instantly done. What if I had to pay 1% property tax? Boom, it's done. How would I write that off on my tax? I mean, it's just bam, instantly the information, and that's just basically using it. There's so many applications, and learning how to ask and prompt is helpful. And you can go, I mean, it's a mile deep and a mile wide, but just a little bit. And most people are reluctant to change. They're reluctant to learn. So I think you could, put a little bit of time there and have a material payoff in terms of time. And you don't have to be an expert. Just become user friendly. For example, if I have an iPhone and I know how to, send emails now, I know how to have a text, I know how to look things up. That was a skill that didn't take that long to learn, but it increases efficiency.
Yeah. So my theory, you were talking about what the famous example I've always used is what Barack Obama used for labor transference, and that is bank tellers and ATMs. So ATMs came along and replaced bank tellers, but you needed repairmen to repair the ATMs. So even though the jobs were different, the amount of employment was pretty much the same. And that's been true basically for the last 400 years. Now, my theory is that, and you tell me if you agree or disagree, my theory is that I think this is going to be fundamentally different. I think in the short term being 5 to 10 years, we're going to see some fairly significant unemployment, because I think this is actually going to this is the first technology that will actually replace people like permanently. So, but do you agree? I mean, a lot of people don't agree with me.
I think people are going to have to reinvent themselves, or that is going to be exactly what happens. Because if you look at right now, that with 4.5% unemployment, I think shadow unemployment are people who've like given up on working or aren't looking for a job, may push it to 8 or 9%. And I know that I've talked to major financial institutions who are not hiring currently in certain roles, and they're not firing people. They're not saying get out of here, AI is coming, but they're just not hiring, and they're counting on natural attrition to take care of that for them. But if you have tasks that can be done or automated, it would be reasonable to think a company would use AI to do that. If you go to certain places, they're Roombas. They vacuum the room.
Yeah.
Go back in, or you have the robots that serve drinks at certain restaurants, and they're not taking your order. You can punch it in, but it may not be at Ruth's Chris, or it may not be at a higher end restaurant, but it might be at a fast serve. So, but that's a job that's no longer there. So, I think this is a window of time for people to improve their skills. And the good news, I think, for people is if you learn AI, you learn how to use it. I think you could earn more than you're currently making, because you'll have higher employability, because now you're doing $60, $80 an hour worth of work, and they're paying you less, but that's because you're using AI to do some of the work that maybe you would have done individually yourself prior. So I think there will be increased unemployment to your point. I think there will be increased efficiency, And I think it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds, because I don't think it's a new world. It's just like when the government put $10 trillion of liquidity into the economy with COVID. There was no really, what's this going to do? We're flooding liquidity. Of course, you get inflation, then you have interest rates to go. It just, things happen that they're hard to predict. And I think that's probably what we're going to face. Some of the consequences are going to be hard to predict.
I don't mean to pry here, but right today in 2025, how do you make the majority of your money? Is it still real estate?
It's real estate related. It could be, I do some other investing, but it's that I speak some, but it's still substantially related to real estate.
And the reason I ask is because AI isn't going to replace you as a real estate buyer and seller, is it?
No, it won't. It won't. What it'll do is it'll help me to be able to, my ability to analyze, for example, say I buy tax liens sometimes, and I can analyze a list of 500 properties, load the list, addresses, do neighbor comps, and all of that in a matter of minutes. That would have taken somebody 3 or 4 weeks to prepare before. What is this house sold for? What's it done? And you'd have the right prompts that would trigger the AI in a certain way. And for me, learning AI is learning how to engage it properly. So ask a crazy question, get a crazy answer, and it's becoming increasingly accurate. It's not foolproof. Sometimes I'll ask it, hey, what's going on with Bitcoin? And it's completely wrong about the price, but it's right about a lot of the verbiage, but wrong about the price. Another time, maybe it's right. But if you say, hey, check the price on that, I'm not sure it's right. And it comes back, and then it corrects it.
But you brought up that's a really interesting point, because the thing is, enough about the particular business to know when it might be wrong. And a lot of people don't. I have the same thing. I've questioned it too. It will spit out something to me. I'll say, you need to check that again. I don't think that's right. And usually Copilot says, oh my God, you're right. It wasn't right,
Right.
But you have to have at least a feel for something to be able to know when that's true.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. It's really interesting. It's a tool, but it's not fully there, but it's great. It'd be like having a high quality intern work in your company where they do a lot of good work product and they really leverage your time, but they're not at the partner level currently. They're just not ready, so it's I think it's at that, but I think the pace in which it's going, it's exceptionally fast.
But the reason I brought all that up is because even though you're using AI to assist you, it's still never going to replace what you're doing, is it?
I don't think so. And I try to really be circumspect and not be like, I'm the one person not affected by AI, but I think it'll make the competition more aware of people buying properties, but you never can underestimate the laziness of a lot of people. So they just won't do the work, So if you're willing to learn and do things, it can likely create a massive edge for a limited period of time. So let's say that people who come in are most people are pretty lazy, don't want to learn it. I'll just say AI is a fad, or whatever, and they won't learn it until they have to. But the next time the next kids come through college that are using it every day, they'll be pretty competitive. But the people that have graduated already, most of them won't invest the energy, just like they never read a book after school. They never really try to improve themselves necessarily, even though they ought. That's kind of what happens.
People are amazingly lazy, aren't they?
So,
I got to tell you, I'm astonished as I've gotten older how lazy I'm becoming. And I was not lazy in my middle age. I wasn't. Not the least.
It's incredibly addictive.
What did you say? I didn't hear that.
It's incredibly addictive.
It is. That's right. Let's put your book on the screen again.
Yeah.
So tell me, why should people buy this? What's in it that they're going to learn?
Well, I think what it does is the first chapter is permission to dream. It'll unlock lives you believe about your own life, and it will help you to see things differently and reframe your life. It will help you to make massive change in short periods of time. And I take time-tested principles, whether it's on finance, family, faith, whatever. I go through all the different areas and unpack them. And the first third of the chapter is where are you really, not where you wish you were. The second part of the second third is how do you get from where you really are to where you want to be. And the last third are like either a stock market, real estate, other asset classes, things you can use to grow wealth over time.
People do need permission to dream, don't they? It's unfortunate but true.
They do, and you almost like people are like crabs in a bucket, and they just pull each other down. And when you talk to an 8-year-old kid, he's going to be an astronaut. You talk to a 12-year-old kid, he's a smaller vision. Time you're 40, you just want a hot meal and a good place to sleep.
That's right. That's right.
But that's kind of how it goes.
Eric, I hope we didn't make you miss your flight.
No, we're good to go. We're good to go.
Good. That's good. I want to thank you for joining us today. I hope you come back. I enjoyed this.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I had a wonderful time. Thank you so much, Jim.
That's good. You take care, all right? We'll see you soon. Thanks. That's ERIC WEIR. His book is called Who's Eating My Pie? We talked to a lot of interesting people here, I gotta say. I was talking about this last night. We were talking to Don. We had Don Zora on last night, our old friend, and about the fact that generally, if you've written a book, you have to know something. And writing books is not. I've never written one. I've threatened to quite a few times. I have a couple ideas I think might be particularly unique. I've even done some outlines, but it's a lot of work. I'm just saying, I'm getting lazy. I totally admit it. I mean, 20 years ago, I had no trouble working 16, 20 hours a day. None. I enjoyed it. Now, I kind of just pretty much want to sit and watch TV with my cat. It's terrible. I don't like it at all. This is a part of the show we call the Jim Cast. Basically, my monologue on current events. And most people with their monologue first, but who are we fooling? I'm an interviewer, That's the big deal. So, what happened today? I'll tell you what happened today. Our president, Donald Trump, addressed the UN, and a couple interesting things happened just before his speech. First of all, he's taking an escalator. Him and the First Lady are taking an escalator up to the General Assembly Hall to do the speech, and he gets on the escalator, and it stops. It fails. Then he gets to the hall and gets up to the podium to give a speech. The teleprompter fails. Now, supposedly, there were people, the rumor was going around among the UN staff that they were going to deliberately stop the escalator. And then when Trump said, why is the escalator stopped? They were going to say, well, sorry, Mr. President, we ran out of money because the president has cut back payments to the UN from the United States about $1 billion. Now, but what's lost in that is for years we paid the full rate. This is like 20 years we paid the full rate, and almost all the other westernized countries didn't until Trump's first term, where he basically told them, look, you pay the full rate or else we're pulling out altogether. And they did. They've been paying it ever since. So, yeah, okay, so we've cut our payment back. All right, that's fine. Yeah, we paid for 20 years and nobody else did. So, yeah, you can bitch and moan. And the teleprompter thing, well, geez, I'm at the point where right now I'm cynical enough to think that maybe that was on purpose. Caroline Levitt, the press secretary for the administration, she is trying to get the UN to launch an investigation to find out if it was on purpose. So Trump, he winged the first part of his speech, and of course, he's a fantastic impromptu speaker, so that wasn't a problem. At any rate, and what he had to say was kind of interesting too. It always is. The man's not dull, whether you like him or not. About the war in Ukraine, he has now said that he thinks the Ukrainians should attempt to win the whole thing, and that's exactly what we got the guys from the Ukraine show on a couple of weeks ago. That's exactly what they've been saying. They kind of changed my mind. It appears the president's mind has changed too, and that's because the vast speculation has been he has come to the conclusion that Putin has become irrational. That you can't negotiate with him. No one really knows this. He's never talked about it, but it's been vastly speculated that he came into office thinking he could end this, and probably rightly so. But he has said publicly that since his first term, Putin has changed, and that appears to be the case. That really does. Other people said the same thing, and uh, it might be that Putin is basically slowly falling into madness, for lack of a better term. He might be going crazy. The guy, I think he's 77, if I'm right. He's purportedly in way worse health than anybody knows, supposedly. He might just decide, fuck it, let's just do this. Let's take over this little country. And then you wonder, well, why haven't they? And Trump talked about this today, too, about the fact that everyone thought this war was going to be over in a week and that the Russians were going to capture Ukraine, and they haven't even come close to doing that. They've been fighting this war for 3.5 years, and so far they've only been able to take about 10% of Ukrainian property, all on the east side, the side that borders Russia. And you would think that Russia, being a quote unquote superpower, would be able to take care of this. But their superpower has been brought up before. They're a superpower in nuclear armaments only. Other than the nukes, they have a very, very weak army. It's weak, it's antiquated. I mean, I was talking to the guys in the Ukraine show. Maybe it was Lockwood. Lockwood's comes on separately uh, because he knows a lot about military strategy. And former Army colonel, and not only that, one of his books is used as a textbook in Army school. I said that, or he said, excuse me, about the fact that in World War II, the Germans were shocked to find out that the Russian army was still using donkeys and mules to haul stuff. And Lockwood said, amazingly, they still do. They're using donkeys and mules in Ukraine to carry armaments and equipment. Mules. Yeah, right. So you tell me about how this is some grand army, superpower here thing. I mean, they're vastly antiquated. It's unbelievable. So what should have taken 2 weeks, a week to 2 weeks, what everybody guessed, has been dragging out for 3.5 years, and for all practical purposes, it's a stalemate. You have one tiny little country fighting this vast army, and that is one thing they don't see so far. They have not run out of people. That's for damn sure. They're losing. The estimate I've seen is they're losing 5,000 to 7,000 troops a week. I don't know if that's true, but that's the estimate I've seen. And Ukraine is holding their own. Now, the interesting thing about Ukraine, they're the opposite, tiny little army, but they're completely on top of it when it comes to state of the art technology. As a matter of fact, supposedly the Americans learn stuff from them. They actually have their army recruiters or troops actually showing the Americans how to do stuff, especially when it comes to drones. They're apparently experts at the drone thing. So, yeah, it's really interesting about Trump seems to have come around to the fact that there's not going to be a stalemate here. There's not going to be a ceasefire. The guys on the Ukraine show, and I should explain briefly what that is, or you haven't seen this before. The Ukraine show is a podcast twice a week, Tuesdays and Fridays. But the reason it's getting so much buzz and the reason people pay attention to it is because one of the three guys who broadcast on that show is broadcasting from Ukraine. He's in Kiev. He lives there. That's Ivan Kurchenko. Sasha Starr, who broadcasts from Toronto, Canada, he's also Ukrainian and he's in Canada. It was actually an interesting show we did because we had 4 guys on the screen from 3 different countries, and it actually worked out great. Worked out just fine. Now, they said they don't have any problems either, technically. It's actually pretty cool. But they've come to the conclusion that a ceasefire, a pause in the war, or a treaty is impossible because Putin will just simply bust it, just like Hitler busted all his agreements too. And I'm starting to think they're right. And apparently, it appears the president has too. He's come around to this point of view that this guy cannot be reasoned with, and he can't. Meanwhile, over in Gaza, this is okay. So now I've been saying this. This is really true. I've been saying this basically since October 7th of, when was it? 2, 3 years ago when the Hamas invaded Israel. That Queers for Palestine is the funniest fucking thing I've heard in 20 years. I mean, it's like you could not be more deftone hypocritical than this because yeah, if you're queer and you go to Palestine, they'll throw you off a building. That's what'll happen. So that's great that you're over here at Columbia University supporting them. Gays for Gaza, yay! Say so. Remember that Greta Thunberg chick, and she got bored with the climate change or something, whatever it is, and she's decided to take on Palestine. So she arranged, or her and a bunch of other people, and I can't remember the name. I did not record the name of the organization. They have an organization. They arranged for 2 boats to go to Palestine via the ocean and bust the Israeli blockade to take in aid, to take in physical aid, food and stuff like that. Okay. All right. So now the Israelis have told them, if you drop the aid off at a certain point, we will make certain it gets there. And but the thing is, everyone knows what happens because this has been happening to the Israelis too. They drop aid off in Gaza, and Hamas just confiscates it. Nobody actually ever gets it, and they know that. But the thing is, they told their little minion boats. They have 2 boats that they will not let them go through the blockade. They can drop the aid off and they will deliver it for them, but you can't go through the blockade. And Greta and her minions have decided, no, we are actually going to go there until it turns out that, well, first of all, Greta got fired. Her own organization fired her. So she got sent to the second boat. The first boat has all the board of directors and all the people running it on. The second boat has all the minions on it, and she got sent to the second boat. Okay, fine. There's that. That happened. All right, hilarious. But what really happened in the last few days is that suddenly some of the actual Palestinians and Muslim people on the first boat, the board of directors, suddenly discovered that a lot of the people they were working with were homosexuals. And they decided that's intolerable. So now they're fighting on this boat. Apparently, they're just coming at wits' end about the fact that the Muslim people, the Palestinians on the boat itself, do not want to work with homosexuals because, according to Islam, homosexuality is wrong. And geez, they didn't figure that out earlier. And the Muslims are saying, well, we were lied to. No one told us these people were gay. And man, am I laughing. Holy shit. It's like, yeah, my joke came true. My dream came true. Gays for Gaza. There you go. Queers for Palestine. Yay. Oh my God. Unbelievable. Well, you probably know this and matter of fact, it's going to happen in about a half an hour. Although they taped it already, I think. I haven't heard. I checked while the interview was playing back. I haven't seen anything so far. But Jimmy Kimmel is coming back on TV tonight. Now, about a third of the country will not see it because last night we reported that there's 2 large group of affiliate stations owned by Nexstar, the biggest group, and the second group trailing it only by a few stations is Sinclair. And Sinclair is well known as a conservative or a company. They embody conservative, and I'll be just blunt, Christian values. It's a Christian-run organization, although it's for-profit, definitely. Nexstar, not so much. Nexstar is just your standard vanilla company. But Sinclair announced yesterday that they aren't going to put the show back on TV. That's be Jimmy Kimmel Live, even if he comes back and starts doing it again, which he is tonight. This morning, Nexstar said the same thing. So because of that, about a third of the country will not see Jimmy Kimmel, even though they're broadcasting it tonight. This is going to be really interesting to see what happens. Charles Gasparino at the New York Post, a business investigative reporter I hold in high esteem. He has said that what's going on here is that, and so I mean, I said this. My prediction. Well, first of all, I predicted that Jimmy would not come back, so obviously it was wrong there. But I've also said that he's going to be off the air because they're losing money hand over fist on the show. And Gasparino explained in a couple columns today about the fact that they that's true and it's not true. They're losing money hand over fist on the actual advertising that runs during the show. That's true, he said. But he said they make up money in ancillary ways from all sorts of other stuff that show does that actually in the long run they actually make a profit on it. So now that's interesting. I didn't know that. But he said yes, it's true. On the actual advertising they run against the show, they're losing money, a lot of money. But the thing is, if they're cut off from 1/3 of the country, they're going to lose even more money. Now, I have a new prediction, which is kind of like updated, and that is, I think that they will probably let Jimmy run his contract out and not renew it. And if I'm right, I think it runs till May or spring of this coming year. He has about 6 or 8 months left, I think, because apparently when this all went down, they were already starting to negotiate it. And I do not think they will bring him back, just like what happened to Stephen Colbert. So and there's a good possibility now. Colbert's apparently show, the Late Show, is losing $40 million a year, and there's some talk that Kimmel's actually losing even more money than that. But as I said, according to Gasparino, that's on the advertising revenues. On the other revenues, like online and all that sort of stuff. And apparently there's several other revenue streams involved. Apparently the show does make a small profit so far. But if they cut it, like I said, if they cut off 1/3 of the country, that might change greatly. So anyway, that's going to happen tonight. The real question is how much, if any, Jimmy will apologize. It appears he's not going to apologize. There won't be a full apology at all. Remember, that's what actually caused this whole thing. When he said this goofy stuff about Charlie Kirk, apparently the Disney brass asked him to apologize and he refused. And that's the actual reason they pulled him off of TV. And then the fact that Sinclair and Nexstar said, we're going to pull the show. Also, this kind of proves the fact. I mean, I talked about this, and Ted Cruz did a podcast over the weekend about this, and he's right about the fact that what FCC Chairman Brennan Carr said about the fact that we can do this either the easy way or a hard way, we're going to take it off the air, did not help at all. It didn't. And the fact of the matter is, Carr should not have said that stuff. He shouldn't. It was, I don't know if I'd say it's distasteful. He technically has the right to do that because apparently, according to the FCC rules, Jimmy Kimmel violated them. But still, it appeared that the government was taking sides, and the government should not take sides. I just don't think so. But that said, it's now obvious by what's happened here that didn't, just like I said, even though, Carr said this stuff and it probably is not right, it didn't make any difference. That's not the reason Jimmy Kimmel went off the air. It was because of the affiliates. And that appears now to be true. So they're putting him back, and we'll see what happens. And then Keith Olbermann decides to, there's this guy named Scott Jennings on CNN. And, Keith's had an interesting history. He started on ESPN. He was one of the 4 main guys on ESPN when they started. Was it him? He was paired with, was it Dan Patrick on Sports Center? And, and I have to say, he has, everyone acknowledges this. Oberman has a talent for presentation. He's got a really good voice. There's just something about him. He knows how to, the camera does kind of like him. Supposedly, though, he's the biggest asshole personally on the planet. And I've never met him. I've never had any experience with him. I'm just saying what other people are saying. Okay? So this is all third hand. But here's some proof, and that is, was it for, I can't remember, was it their 25th anniversary of ESPN? They invited back every single person who's ever worked there, except for Keith Olbermann was not invited. Every single person that ever worked at ESPN was invited to the party, except Keith Olbermann. So that's, what do you want to say? I don't know. And he's basically been fired from every place he's ever worked, because apparently he's an insufferable prick. apparently. Now there's I'm going to talk about this, and I don't know this guy. Matter of fact, but there's a guy named Bob Yates who worked here in Minneapolis on talk radio, 1500 KSCP in the 1970s. No, sorry, the 1980s. He was hugely popular and very, very funny. He was very good at his job. And he has kind of had the same fate. He's been fired pretty much from every place he's worked. And it's been pointed out, I think he's pointed it out, but he's right about the fact that the people, whoever replaced him in any particular position, never did as good in the ratings as he did. And that's true. But apparently, he is personally such a fuck up that nobody wants to deal with a guy. You know, and that's really talent. That's really sad if you have legitimate talent, like both Oberman and Yates seem to have, and yet you're just alienating everyone. I don't know. Oberman's been out of work now for several years. I'm sure he made enough money during his run. He's never going to starve to death. I'm sure that's true, but still, it's like. But anyway, I never told you about why he's in the news. So Scott Jennings is a conservative commentator on CNN. They don't have a lot, but Scott's kind of made a name for himself because he's pretty good at talking. He's pretty good at presenting the conservative point of view. And Oberman posted on the X talking. This was about the Charlie Kirk thing this weekend. I think it might have been Friday. Posted something. The actual post said, "You're next, motherfucker." That's actually what the post said. Now, I can say that word here because we are not under the FCC rules. But he being Oberman, quickly deleted it and then rephrased it because what he apparently meant to say, and he said in the subsequent tweet that replaced it, is that he was talking about Jennings' career, not about like offing him, But it was kind of too late. People saw the tweet, and today we got to hand it to Oberman. He apologized, actually quite profusely. He said that he was talking about his career and not his life, and he's sorry that he said I did a wrong thing, and you don't get an apologies out of Oberman very often, but he did. But but the reason I brought this up is, why is somebody who seems to be so intelligent and legitimately talented, why do these people do such bullshit, stupid stuff? I just don't. I don't understand it. I really don't. It's like, why don't people realize that anything you post online is public? I've compared this to like newspapers in the 1960s and 70s. 50 years ago, if something was printed in the New York Times or your local newspaper even, it was assumed it was true because it took a lot of effort to get something in the newspaper, both physically and metaphorically. First you had to you had to come to the attention of a reporter. They had to write it up. Then they were literally 56 years ago, they were laying out lead type every day to print a newspaper. It was ridiculous, actually, the amount of work that went into putting on newspapers, and in some ways kind of still is. The only reason people are still printing newspapers is because, for some reason, display advertising in newspapers works extremely well and still does, from what I understand. But then again, it was another newspaper. Was it one of the Denver papers? Killed their print edition just last week, I think it was. And that's I've had a running bar bet going for forever about the fact that when will the New York Times finally stop printing the printed version of the paper? Actually, I'm guessing it'll be like another 50 years. But it was the New York Post, if I'm right, was only printing like 25,000 copies now of the actual printed newspaper, something like that. Even though they have several million subscribers, but it's all online. I don't know. It's going to be really interesting what will happen. If it wasn't for that display advertising thing, this would have ended a long time ago. But display advertising in the newspaper, it works. You put an ad in the newspaper for your plumbing service, and people will call you. And conversely, the reason you see every single newspaper on the planet now is either demanding or encouraging people to pay a subscription is because display advertising on the internet does not work at all. And I was involved with one of the biggest websites on the web in the 1990s, and that was the little lie that we all bought that turned out not to be true. And that is, in the 1990s, display advertising on the internet did not work at all. At all. We were running banner ads and stuff like that. They did not work. There was about a 5-year period when Google came up with the AdWords system, and actually they didn't. A company called Overture did, and they bought them. But they renamed it Google AdWords and started running it against search engine results in 2003. And search engine advertising still works, although less and less people are using search engines too. But they expanded that to the point, and it still exists, that anybody with a website can run Google ads. And aside from the search engine, those ads don't work either. They don't work. They just don't work. No one clicks on them. There was a 5-year period when it first started that it worked a little bit, and people quickly burnt out and figured the whole thing out. And for whatever reason, I just think it's because they're overly automated. The thing about a newspaper is that the physical newspaper, it's laid out differently every single day. And so somebody has to actually lay out the paper and figure out where all the ads go and all that sort of stuff. So somebody's job every single day is to do that. And every single day it looks a little different. Whereas online, all the templates to the pages are basically all the same. So you plug an ad into the spot, you know where the ad is, you know how big it's going to be. It's really easy to ignore it. Easy for me to say, but nobody's gonna hire people in an automated environment to actually lay out pages. That's not going to happen. So NASA has confirmed that as of this week, they have discovered 6,000 exoplanets. Those are planets outside of the solar system. And you're thinking, well, Jim, why is that interesting? I'll tell you why it's interesting. 25 years ago, they discovered exactly zero. In 25 years, we found 6,000 planets outside of our solar system. I mean, I'm under the impression they're finding a couple dozen a day now. Excuse me. And these planets are all over the place and of all sorts of different types and sizes. Some of them have high volcanic activity. Some of them are described as styrofoam planets. In other words, they have extremely light mass, even though they're not small. It's like unbelievable. And then there's 2 new telescopes that are going to come online, the orbital telescopes, in the next year or so, and they'll only find even more, and the whole thing's just kind of blown up. I mean, this is the part. If you're going to go off of the fact that we have not discovered extraterrestrials yet, although I can argue about that, but this is the part where they where SETI will finally find something, because we are finally now have the technology to actually go out and actually look. We have a range right now of about 120 light years from Earth. Now you have to think about that. That's not in terms of the Milky Way galaxy. That's not a very big space. It's quite small, actually. But in that diameter, 125 light years, we found 6,000 planets. And at this point, it appears there's an average of 1 planet for every star in the Milky Way galaxy. It's not distributed that way. Some stars have solar systems, and then some have none. But it averages to one planet a star. And the last count I saw is there's 100 million stars in the Milky Way, and that's just our galaxy. So can you do the math? No, no one can wrap their mind around this. We're one little galaxy in the giant universe. There's galaxies all over the place, and let's say every galaxy has about 100 million stars in it. Then let's say that there's about 100 million planets in every star, in every galaxy. So you're going to tell me that we're the only people in the universe, huh? I don't think so. Not going to happen. And speaking of that, this podcaster, I didn't catch the guy's name. He decided, Tim Burchett, and was he of South Dakota, House member, if I'm right? He's one of the leaders in the U.S. Congress on the disclosure phenomena for UFOs. He's been pushing the military to actually say about the fact that they have these crash extraterrestrial spacecraft. Yeah, I mean, he has gone on record saying he's certain they do, and a couple other congressmen have too. But this podcaster accosted him basically on the street in Washington D.C. and asked him about how that was going, and I don't know how their conversation revolved around this, but Burchett said that he said he has been told by military personnel that there are underwater alien bases all over the planet, and several of them around the United States. And people have been talking about this for quite a while. The quote was that this is what Burchett said. He said, "What if these entities that are here on this Earth, they have been here on this Earth for who knows how long, and we think they're coming from way out there." Maybe they did a millennia ago, but maybe they're here now, and they're just in these deep water areas. So that's what Burchett said. There's stuff off the coast of San Diego in Southern California that around the Catalina Island that they've photographed stuff underwater that's very clearly is not natural, and they don't know what it is. It's like there's buildings down there basically, and they're not ours. People say, and at this point, I mean, I was watching a podcast on YouTube, and somebody was talking about the fact that it's really true. At this point, they're not even trying to cover them up anymore. They're not even trying to like blur them out on Google Earth. These things have been there, and so for so long, and they've been so recognized that they're not even trying to cover it up, and nobody knows what they are, and they're underwater. So there's an anecdotal story. I hear a lot of this stuff. Like, I don't know what's true or not, but I'll pass this on to you. So apparently, a bunch. Sounds like setting up a joke, but I'm not. A bunch of Mexicans are driving down Sepulveda Boulevard in Los Angeles, right? Okay, like 6 guys in a car. All right, and this UFO comes over them really close, apparently, and they get out of the car and they're scared to death. And one guy kind of runs toward it, and apparently they beam him up, and he's gone, and his friends freak out. So the guy, 5 days later, he's like dropped off a mile away, where they found him, like 5 days, and he says he was taken to an underwater base. And the really weird thing is he says, yeah, he's dealing with little gray aliens, but he's also dealing with humans in U.S. Army military uniforms. He said they were both down there. I don't know. But the thing is, until recently, this wasn't very common that these buildings were down there. Most people didn't know. And this guy said they took him to one. So who knows? Like, I'm just passing that on to you. And finally, speaking of the aliens, so this happened. This supposedly happened in May of 1970. So this is a long time ago, but this is just being reported now. It's just making the UFO news, and it happened in St. Louis. So 5 employees of a motel said that 4 aliens tried to check in. And he said that they were basically wearing disguises, and they had wigs on and stuff, and very expensive clothes, and 2 were dressed as women and 2 were dressed as men. And he said the men were wearing very, very expensive suits, and they were quite short. He said they could barely see over the counter. And so they paid in cash, and they tested the cash afterwards. The cash was real. But what happened is, so they rented a room. Okay, fine. And the 5 people in this motel who were working, they were just beside themselves because they knew something was seriously wrong here. It's like, but they had money, and they signed in. He said that the guy, the one of them that actually signed the register, didn't know how a pen worked. But the really amazing thing is, they went to their room, and no one ever saw them leave. Then they had cameras and stuff, CCTV set up, no, they went to their room, and after a couple days of not hearing anything from them, they decide the personnel of the motel decide to go into the room, and they were not there. But they know for a fact because the door of that room was monitored by a camera, a videotape camera. They checked it. No one ever left. They went into the room, disappeared. There you go. You can sleep on that. It's like, I don't know, just the craziest crap. And then you don't know if this stuff's true, but then again, it takes a lot of people to get together to convincingly lie too. There's that famous thing in Niagara Falls, New York, about the men in black who came into the one of the major hotels there, and it turns out it's hard to say because I'm starting to think sometimes the government pays people to lie, but it sounds it appears that was actually a hoax, that the personnel of the hotel actually got together and basically lied in unison. Basically, they said these. Now, the interesting thing is that those two men in black are actually on the CCTV security footage. They actually have footage of them, but apparently the whole thing was just they made that up. They had people dress up and run through because they knew they knew there'd be a camera and whatever, supposedly. But I've heard a lot of stories where people said, no, we just made that up, where I'm starting to think, no, I don't think you did. It's like, it's hard to tell, but I've said this before. I go into the assumption that 95% of all the UFO evidence is bogus. 95%. But the problem is the 5% that's left is so huge that it basically proves the phenomena. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. I want to thank ERIC WEIR for joining us tonight. Tomorrow, Mandy Gunasekera. There, I gotta know. Did you see how I pronounced that? I did it. Her book is called. Hold it. What's it called? Y'all. It's something. Hold on. It's called Y'all Fired. That's what it's called. She was the chief of staff for the U.S. EPA under the first Trump administration. So we'll have fun talking to her. Also, tomorrow night, I forgot to announce at the top of the show, we will be taking phone calls. We've pretty much got a pattern down now. We're taking phone calls on Thursday nights, the last show of the week. But tomorrow, we're not doing a show this Thursday. So tomorrow will be the last show of the week, and we're going to take phone calls tomorrow night. You can call in. So yeah, we're going to do that. We're going to do that once a week now. So thank you for watching. Really appreciate it. Love doing this. Love talking to ERIC WEIR. That was fun. Mandy Gunasekera tomorrow. I now learn I can say it. And you guys sleep well if you're watching this live. I'll see you. Thanks. Take care.